Tree-lined streets is one feature that makes Sioux Falls a pleasant place to live, work, and play. Maintaining these trees is the responsibility of the budding property owner. Welcome. My name's Dwayne Stahl, Forestry Supervisor with Sioux Falls Parks and Recreation. I'd like to take this time to review a program called Project Trim. Project Trim is a proactive tree trimming program that inspects and corrects low-hanging branches over streets and sidewalks. City ordinance requires a 10-foot clearance over sidewalks, 12-foot clearance over most residential streets, and a 16-foot clearance over arterial streets, such as 41st Street, and most collector streets, such as Western Avenue. Each year, 1/5 of the city, or approximately 10,000 properties, are inspected for low-hanging branches, and if required, are brought into compliance with city code. In order to manage this volume of inspections, the main area is divided into 3 smaller sections. Each one of these sections is surveyed at a different time during the year. The survey is key in sending letters to only those property owners that need to trim. But it is the property owners that are key in the success of this program. 97 out of every 100 properties that are sent letters to trim are successfully brought into compliance without city crews having to trim and bill for the service. Good job, Sioux Falls, for making our neighborhoods safe and well-maintained. TRIM in Project Trim stands for Tree Raising Improvement Methods. These methods are described in the Project Trim brochure. There are 3 trimming methods based on the age of the tree: young trees, immature trees, and mature trees. With the assistance of my staff, we will demonstrate these 3 trimming methods. When you receive a letter, one of the things you'll notice in the letter, it says that you have at least 1 tree that needs trimming. Our survey doesn't get as detailed as far as how many trees, where they need to be trimmed, if they're a private tree, a shrub, or a street tree. So you'll need to go out and do the inspections yourself. I recommend that you have something to measure with. This is an extendable paint pole that I've calibrated to 10 and 12 feet. I can also measure 16 feet when I hold the 12 feet 4 feet off the ground. When you're inspecting your tree, you'll need to take the pole. When we inspect over the sidewalk, it's from edge to edge, 10 feet tall. Looking up the pole, you can see that these branches are coming into the branch-free zone. So this tree will need to be trimmed. This is our first example of a tree trimming method that's explained in our Project Trim brochure. How to trim a young tree. The first step is to always remove any dead or broken or diseased branches in the canopy of the tree. The second step is to remove any competing dominant leaders, co-dominant leaders, multi-stems on the tree. This is probably one of the easiest things you can do with a young tree to help that tree become strong down the road to withstand storm damage. Without removing these leaders, these types of branch structures tend to break during a storm. The third step is to maintain a 1/3 trunk, 2/3 crown. So we want to find out where this 1/3 height is on this tree from the ground up and remove any branches below that area. Here's a little trick you can use to identify where the 1/3 trunk should be on your tree. Put your thumb on the number 3 on your ruler. Put the thumb at the base of the tree. Now pull the ruler back towards you until you see the ruler hitting the top of the tree. At this point, look at the number 2. That is your 1/3 height. So I showed you how to find that 1/3 mark on your trunk. It's right about in here. So what we want to do now is we want to remove all these branches below that mark to develop that 1/3 trunk, 2/3 crown. There is a myth that these lower branches, as the tree grows taller, also raise off the ground. That's not true. Trees grow from the tips, so these branches, if we came back 20 years later, would still be at the same space, the same height off the ground. So we want to develop a strong trunk on this tree, and they should be removed at this time. So now we've elevated this trunk to 1/3 the height of the tree. We don't want to leave big stubs, yet we don't want to cut flush to the trunk. There's a certain area where we target our pruning cut, and that's described in our brochure. So after we've raised the trunk on this tree, now we go back to the sidewalk and see what's left to be trimmed. Again, going at the edge of the sidewalk, we still have a few branches that come out into the branch-free zone. So now what we need to do is go back up there, trim the tips of those branches so it's out of the sidewalk corridor, but not all the way back to the trunk. Now we've brought these branches in by taking from the tips back into the tree to a point where it's desirable to a bud, a crotch, a branch union. We reduced the length of that branch so now it's not in the travel corridor of the sidewalk. This tree now is trimmed on this side. Now we'll go to the street side and finish it. So the street side, when we raised the trunk up, we actually took the branches out that were below the 12 foot, and without any additional trimming, this side is fine. Now that our tree is trimmed and is compliant with city code, our work isn't done. We still have some branches to dispose of. In the letter, there are several options for you to do that. One is taking them to Mueller Pallet. The other one is taking the letter with you to the city landfill and disposing of your branches there. Make sure you tarp your branches or there is a fine for untarped loads. Okay, our second tree trimming method is the trees that are in that immature category. This tree right here, all we have to do again is get out our pole, and we can see right away that the branches are below our 10 feet here and below our 12 feet over the street. Like we did with the young tree, we established that 1/3 trunk height. We've already done that with this tree, and that is right up in here. So we're going to remove every branch below that point. When we're taking our measurements on the street, we measure from the base of the curb, 12 feet up, straight up, and out over the street. This tree also needs to be trimmed. So we've removed the lower 1/3 of this tree. So we have a 1/3 trunk, 2/3 crown. You get out your pole and inspect, and we're good as far as clearances over the sidewalk. Now let's check over the street. And our clearances are good over the street. We're also looking for what we call permanent branches. These are branches that originate off the main trunk and are growing out over the street. These branches can continue to live and grow with this tree and maintain the clearance over the street. This is what we do when we have our streets, we have the canopies. These trees or branches are growing together, and that's kind of one of our goals of our streetscape, is to have those canopies over our streets. This is our last tree trimming method. It's the mature tree. At this point, we should have our permanent branches already established going out over the street. The lowest branch should be a permanent branch. And so we're just going to inspect the canopy on this tree with our 12-foot measuring tool. And we can see that we have younger branches coming down off the permanent branches that are going to need to be trimmed, preferably back up to the permanent branch to provide that 12-foot clearance over the street. In closing, I would like to leave you with a few comments. I enjoy driving through an area that has been recently trimmed. It's like a haircut. It just looks and feels good. There are no two trees alike. However, by following the steps for the trimming methods that best matches your tree and using the tree trimming diagram as a guide, your tree can be trimmed to coexist around our streets and sidewalks. Please refer to the Project Trim survey area map on our website. It would be beneficial to you and your neighbors if the trees in your care are trimmed before we survey your neighborhood. Not only will your neighborhood look better, but it will reduce the number of letters we will need to send out. Thanks again for your cooperation and making this program a success. If you have any questions, you can contact me directly at 367-8156. Until next time, safe trimming, Sioux Falls.